once we got the pre-seed, when we were raising pre-seed, I was like, yeah, that means we can do this and that, and we can do this. Like we had like this checklist of kind of like that's what I would dream to do. And I wish I didn't have that. I wish I kind of was a bit more organic to the moment. That was something that I was really naive about. I guess coming from a corporate background, and when you dream about like, okay, I'm going to have a startup and this would be like my ideal composition, you can't have that right out from the gate. That was the realization of like, okay, I can't have this dream scenario, but I can have, let's say, 20% of it. And what can I achieve with that?
Welcome to the Rise and Play podcast. I am Sophie Vaux, your host and leadership coach. In the show, my wonderful co-host and I sit down with influential and diverse leaders from the gaming industry to hear about their leadership journey. Not the well-polished stories, but the real stories. The up and down, the breakthrough, and the failures. Or should we rather say learnings? Each episode will transport you into a magical space of vulnerability with our guest. And together, you'll be reminded that no matter how hard it is, you are not alone in this journey, and find the courage to keep going. Come and join the ride. Let's begin. Oh, and one last thing, I am working on new ideas to scale our impact on leadership health and consciousness in games. Would you like to be part of the change too? Then let's connect. Now, let's get to the episode. Hi everyone! Greetings from Berlin, Kreuzberg, in the heart of Kreuzberg. I'm resuming the podcast in video today from Berlin. It was a little break with video because I've been doing it for last year a bit in all the places, London, India, and in Berlin a little bit, but resuming it. And I'm in the company of Nicola Vizon today, founder of Vizta Digital, co-founder of Vizta Digital, and we're going to get deep dive in the story of the company and the story of Nicola, especially today. So thank you for receiving me. I was about to say welcome to the show, but thank you for receiving me.
I was like, okay, thanks for visiting our office. We don't get many visitors, so yeah, it's nice to have you here.
Yeah, so just for a story, was so far are very Berlin, startup. You have a lot of those old furniture and very appreciated in Berlin. So we are totally in the vibe of Kreuzberg for the ones who know Berlin. Well, let's begin the conversation here, getting to know more about you because I know a little more about you. And I remember when I connected with your co-founder, Tung. And then when he mentioned you, was like, what, we've been to the same companies. We are both in Berlin. You're a founder of a company and a game that is for women, primarily as the audience. Like, how come I didn't know you? So then we connected and I thought this would be a pity that others don't know more about your company, what you're doing, and especially about your journey. So maybe for the audience who don't know you so much, can you give us a quick background on your journey in games and what led you to where you are today?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. So I would describe myself as an engine room rat. So that's probably why a lot of people don't know me. So I work a lot behind the scenes and don't really go out in the open. But I started by studying game design in the UK. So I've always loved gaming, and that love of gaming came from my granddad. So I've always been really into it. And my sister is actually a game designer as well. So we kind of are a very creative game designy family, and kind of the university in England offered it. It was one of the early unis that offered kind of pure game design, and you could do a bit of everything. So that was kind of where I started really seriously getting into it. I studied interactive media before and like these kind of like parallel tracks, but that was the first opportunity I got to dive properly into games. And yeah, my journey kind of started there. I didn't really know where I belong. Like, I was like, I can do game design, I can do programming. I was doing ActionScript 3 programming at the time, so that kind of dates myself, I suppose. And I was sort of on this mission of like, okay, I need to be a programmer, I need to be a game designer, I need to be an artist. And my lecturers kind of sat me down and they were like, you can do everything, but like, you're the master of nothing. Have you thought about going into producing, project management, something like that? And I was like, what is that? And then that's really started me kind of pushing to kind of learn a bit more about how to be a producer and things. And that was really the start of then when I left university, I had like a plan. I was like, okay, I want to be a producer, I want to be a project manager in games, but I felt like I had a lot of knowledge about the development side of games, but I really wanted to get into publishing. I was like, how do games make money and how can I kind of manage projects by bringing the two sides together? And that was how I ended up first in Berlin at Area Games. So I joined Area Games. I was a product coordinator there. So it was kind of liaisoning with the developers in Asia, kind of publishing the, let's say, Western version of the games.
Yeah.
And I loved that. I really was so happy I found like the publishing side because it filled a knowledge gap that I didn't have. And yeah, from there, I've worked at Spill Games. I've worked at Nexar or Friday. I've worked different platforms as well, Steam games, mobile games, virtual reality, browser games even. And it's been an interesting journey, I would say, to kind of get to this point. I think the biggest aha moment of why I became a founder and why I started the journey was at Spill Games. We had an online portal where it's like a portal is kind of like a collection of websites with browser-based games. So it was a lot of Flash games, very snackable, very quick. And I saw a huge amount of fashion games on there. And I was like, I love fashion games. I play them. And I saw from the data, adult women were also engaging with these games too. And I felt not alone. And this was before the launch of covert fashion. This was before the launch of Kim Kardashian. And then I started seeing in mobile, covert came out, Kim Kardashian came out in 2014. Then I fell in love with the Nicki franchise, Love Nicki, Shining Nicki this. And it kind of spiraled that I saw kind of touches of fashion, but I didn't see anyone doing it how I pictured it. And that was kind of one of the trigger points to start the journey, I suppose.
Wow. Thank you. And I didn't know all the nuances of your background, but I see the journey where it's quite a round also experience around design, which is quite key, especially in the role, because you are, well, the designer, the creative director of a current company, but also getting the operational experience, how to distribute, how to deliver, which at that time, the web portal. The key word for each company is like, what is our go-to-market strategy? And there was a heavy focus on mobile distribution, and then maybe I think web has kind of been forgotten, but coming back. So, and I'm sure you have some insights from that time, which now could be quite relevant. So something I'm interested in, before we get into the journey of Vizta, how it has been founded with Tung. I know a bit about the fashion games, like the ones you mentioned, coming from mobile. I haven't looked very closely, of course, on the web, but you talked about something that you've been missing still as you, as an audience. It's something also maybe from with the designer mind that was in covert fashion, as covert fashion was delivered more mass market, Kardashian. So could you just walk us through like more your journey as you saw fashion games developing, but also the gaps that haven't been really served yet in the market?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. So I think my first touch point with fashion games was when I was a child cutting out the dolls, the paper dolls, and kind of dressing them up.
Wow.
And that was really like my first touch point of fashion games. And I loved that because you had this doll. I would cut out the clothes. I would even cut out magazines to kind of make outfits for these like paper dolls. And that was my first touch point of it. The first real digital fashion game I played, and again, this is maybe doubting myself or aging myself, so to say, is this game called Totally Angelica, based on the Rugrats. With Angelica, and you're trapped in a fashion space and you have to collect clothes and do fashion shows with Angelica, so kind of like this. And that was the first time I was like, oh, this could be really cool in digital. And it was like an RPG game, and you had a strong collection game. You had like an evolution type meta, and it was just so fun. And I guess when I saw other fashion games, or when I saw games like my sister was a heavy RuneScape player, and I saw like the character creator, and you could kind of get clothes in a way, right? Like your gear and stuff like that. I was like, oh, I like that part of the game. I don't like anything else. Yeah. And that was kind of like a reoccurring theme, I would say. Like I loved The Sims. I loved kind of like, but the character creation part, the clothes part, I didn't really mind about like the interior design or that part. And that was something consistently when I was kind of engaging with games, like I would really love that initial part, but not much else. And I guess that was kind of what I was missing, was taking it further and making a game completely just like the Angelica game was, like totally fashion, totally unapologetic, super feminine, super just like going full in, rather than just like doing a gamified fashion experience or doing something that was really shallow, I would say. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does completely. And as you are, the way you're describing it in your words, like unapologetic, I think really resonated with me. I understand that like a central piece of what you're creating the product with Vizta Digital is around the dressing up fashion experience at the core. And then there's the other elements that support it. But it started with like what you liked also in the games that were quite developed. Like in The Sims, it's quite elaborated because I remember playing Sims. It was very innovative as you could play with the color, the shade, so everyone could have their own version, right, of themselves, the body shapes, and also the clothes. Although it was not very push in fashion, right? So it was really like your random sweater and so on. And maybe then to push it further, because when you started the company in 2022 or 21?
Kind of, we started ideation in 21 and it was kind of like formally in 22.
Yeah. So, you know, those are the moments where founders ask themselves, is this the company we want to build? Do we want to start? And there's always, of course, like the market thinking, right? So 2021, I'm trying to rewind myself back, but it was kind of known at that time that fashion games were really, at least there was a perception on mobile, very taken over by just that big game, COVID fashion, right? I wouldn't even call Kim Kardashian fashion games, although it used a very strong celebrity and all the things around the glamorous part. So I wouldn't, from my perception, and I could imagine the critical thinking, oh, it's so big already, they are so established with all the partnership, why even bothering starting there against or like as a complement? So what was the thinking here to say, especially from you, I believe in this direction, I have a vision, and I really believe, leap of faith, let's do it. So.
I mean, it definitely wasn't just me on my own, but for me as a player of covert fashion, I was like, this can't be it. In terms of visuals, like I kept seeing coming out another 2D fashion game that was just like another copy of covert fashion and like with minor innovations. But I was like, this surely can't be it, with new technology, with new gameplay mechanics that had kind of been invented in other genres and stuff like that. I was like, why is like the top fashion game was on top for like 10 years plus. It's very, very old. And it still wasn't being taken over because there wasn't much being launched about it. And at the time in 2021, we were doing some consulting work and this studio was doing Web3. I was observing Web3 because I was also working at a company that was doing things with digital fashion. It was more with scanner technology. So it was about like scanning 3D humans and also like having fashion component with that. So I was thinking about digital fashion. We were seeing this Web3 thing, and it was that moment where we sat together. I think it was like in the Soho House in Berlin, and it was me, Tung, and it was actually Tung's co-founder of a fashion magazine, Fashion and Lifestyle, an art kind of magazine that he started way back when. And we were kind of sitting there and we were like, okay, if we were to do something, what would it be? And then I started talking about my idea for a fashion game. And these guys, they kind of jumped and they were like, yeah, that's cool. And you can evolve it like this or that or this. And it really evolved from that. So there wasn't really like a fear of like, okay, COVID's been on top and it's like eating the space. It was like, it's gone as far as it can go. And that space hasn't had any innovation. The signals that the market was changing was there. Like, fashion game should be a thing. Like, people go on Instagram and that's all they consume now is fashion. Like, digital fashion is becoming relevant, and it's not about just having like a 3D garment, but it's like consuming digital fashion content in a way. So it was, how can we evolve that and how can we innovate on the market? There's more women playing games than ever, but there's still not a big variety of game types being offered for that audience. And then with the Web3 component and seeing like brands looking at the space and opening up opportunity, we were like, let's just start ideating it and see where it goes.
And here you are. Something that caught really like my attention is, it's like almost taking for granted. Like now I come back to, okay, when we think of the audience as players, or like pure gamers, and then you look at, I don't know, in a category, mid-core games, RPG, you are hundreds of games that are like competing for the top of the market, a variety, so because all the nuances. And then when you think of fashion, I can only think of one, and is that it, right? And then I never question it, like, oh, it's one that fashion game that cover fashion for all women. And really there's more nuances to that, as exactly the audience, as we know statistically now, is like more than like the half, even as players, so that established, but like the offer is not that varied. And so now it's like, I really understand the thinking around it, like not taking it for granted, where, pushing the boundaries of what's possible. And fair to say as well, when I saw attempt of fashion games being produced, I worked also with some clients, and they were more of a copy. And I wouldn't say there was a strong creative lead and a woman like really loving fashion behind the production. So it couldn't innovate further, because it's just like what works, analyzing like a PM, and then let's do this better with no soul. So I can see the difference also what you offer, that is coming from your whole experience, knowledge, passion. That it's hard to just copy like this from the outside.
Definitely. Like, I'm a huge fashion gamer, and it's like, if I wanted the best fashion game ever, how would I design it? And that sounds like super selfish and super silly, but that's like the perfect place to start. And kind of what is in the market being offered and what am I missing? And then it's kind of like answering those questions and then validating, okay, is there like a business case out of that? Fashion games are really underserved, but that doesn't mean you don't see fashion elements in other games. If you look at games like Dota, their whole monetization is basically on fashion. You could call it like that. Or if you kind of look at Fortnite with skins and things. So you see games and fashion in games is super, super relevant, but there's not just like a singular experience that maybe like taken it to the next level and focused on just that, in my opinion.
I'm fully aligned with that. I was thinking also of Baldur's Gate, where I spent quite some time customizing, and I always spent too much time there. So I definitely recognize that. And then let's go into 2022, where you started the company. Can you walk us through how it started with Tung, how maybe the funding process? So proceed, I guess, and where you are today, right? Since the funding to where you are today.
Definitely. So, it wasn't really an easy start, I would say, because at the beginning it was kind of bootstrap. It was kind of validating the idea. And it was really kind of understanding the space and also a lot of education. One of the challenges that I had in it is that I've been so deep into it since 2013, or kind of like since I've been playing these games, that I have so much legacy and so much knowledge, because I just observed the space for fun, because that's just like what I enjoy, that it was kind of like a lot of education process to get everyone on the same level, to also get their input too, because I don't want it just to be my one perspective, because everyone brings a real good value from the team, and evolve it from that. So it was really understanding what these new technologies can do, like what in Web3 makes sense for us to bring, like how can we evolve the current business case with that, really looking at the current market, looking at games like Fortnite, looking at Roblox, looking at kind of like these experiences and creating a new pitch, I would call it, because I have pitched a fashion game before when I was at Spill Games, but that needed to evolve. So there was kind of like a lot of, I call it killing your babies. Like when I was at uni, I had this lecturer and he was like, look, one of the hardest things you have to do as a creator is kill your babies. You may think it's like the best idea ever, but just kill them, and trust me, it's going to be the only way for it to evolve. So that's really something that we had to do at the beginning to make sure that the concept was understandable, communicatable, because what we're doing is something innovative. And a lot of the people we were going to, they also had no idea what a fashion game was. They were like, is there even like a space like that? So there was a lot of like advocacy that we had to do, and being bootstrapped, and kind of, I've never founded a company before. So I really leaned on the experience and the knowledge of my co-founder, Tung, to guide the way of kind of like how to do it. And he's an amazing co-founder for me, because he gives me the space of like, that's your area, like you own product and you own that. And he knows where he brings value, but he doesn't like block me from, hey, I'm interested to learn a bit more about this. And he'll be kind of like a guiding, so we can kind of work together. But definitely a lot of the founding the company and the initial way to fundraise definitely depended on his experience. And I'm really, really grateful for that, because I don't think we would be here, because I really went in so naive. Like, I came from like a corporate world and I was like, yeah, if I found a company, this is how I would do it. And I can say with reflection now is totally wrong. Like, that initial checklist that I went in mind with, just I should have killed that baby and put it in the bin, and really kind of went in there a lot more humble. So we did our pre-seed, which was tough. It was a learning experience for all of us. It was really about network activation, getting the pitch idea out there. People were also talking about Web3. It was like, that also changed. That kind of went through a market change as well. So it was hot and then it was not. And then we were learning what didn't work and what does work, and kind of observing. So we really had a rapid fire, lot of changes, but we finally found kind of the cap table and the initial investors that would give us enough for pre-seed to build out that initial alpha and to validate some of, let's say, the technological areas that we know we needed to innovate on, because we knew going into it we wanted to make a 3D fashion game that no one's ever seen before. And one hand is the mechanics, but the other hand is ensuring that we can do that in the best way on mobile. And that was really something we wanted to validate during pre-seed, is building our connections within fashion as well. And this is where kind of our other co-founder came on board, Matthias. And he came on board as creative director, and he is not from the gaming industry. He's from the fashion industry, because we wanted a true marriage between fashion and games to make it authentic. So part of us are from games and part of us are from fashion. And then what we've built, which is this alpha prototype that we have now, that we can start taking to first users, getting early feedback, this kind of thing, is really that true marriage. And I think you can feel it when playing it. You can kind of feel the fashion aspect, you can feel the game aspect, and it really creates something, at least I haven't seen as a player out there in the market. And trust me, I download everything. It's like fashion game, dress up game. I'm like, yeah, I'd give it an install, I'll give it 20 minutes of my time and see where it takes me. So we're going into a seed raise now that we have the alpha build, now that we've validated some assumptions, and we're going to fully scale, build out the team, this whole kind of crazy journey.
Yeah, wow. It's very impressive also the journey where recognizing, I think, like some takeaways also for the listeners as you are in this journey or have been. Yeah, it's far from a walk in the park, the pre-seed, but bootstrapping and figuring it out for yourself, like having gone through that and also working with a lot of founders, it's a must, because you are figuring out the way you work together. So co-founder relationship, a partnership, having clarity. Like the main challenge I can see for your idea is translating, finding the language, the common language. And like you said, you have a whole legacy of, I find that as a founder, everything makes sense in your mind. And when you try to explain, somebody is just like, what is this? And so it's a lot of work of meeting your audience, in that case, like sometimes investors or partners, to really find the common language. So I can see that the challenge, especially if most of the investors, I assume, are also not women, let's be honest here. And also I wanted to highlight, because I tried your alpha, and what you describe, because now I hear the story and now I have had the experience, it is on another level, the experience. If I have to describe in my words as a player, because I was playing it as a player, there was very nuanced things like the move, the animation, even like the fabric. You have a character moving her hand, and with the fabric, and it's moving, and I was like, wow, it's like, it looks really real. I thought it was very rich. There's not much yet of content, but it was, so that I was really impressed. Congratulations for that. And I can see the technological bit. So it's a teaser for people who want to test that. Like, please connect with Nicola. But I expected something else, because I was, okay, another fashion game I played. And I've tried also a lot of fashion games for my research for a client, but I was on another level, which is, you go to a restaurant, you have a nice meal, and then you go to that experience, like a Michelin star, and you have another level of experience that you can't describe, by all the points, but it's just on another level. And that's how it felt for me playing your alpha already, which is early stage, but a very impressive job on that. So congrats to the team and you.
Thanks. I think the problem with fashion games is they look at covert fashion and they say, I'm going to copy covert fashion. But covert fashion was made 10 years ago, and they're not thinking about where that audience is now. And so that's why kind of going into this, I wanted to be really careful. And that would be my advice for anyone who kind of has an idea and there's already a big player in that market, is that there's always space for innovation. So we looked at what's our audience doing beyond fashion games. And we know that they're on Instagram, they're using Tinder, you know, like they're doing things outside of gaming. So what can we learn from where they spend their time, the shopping apps they use and stuff, and how can we bring that into the game to make it feel modern and make it feel fresh, rather than just do another copy of Covert or the hundreds of very miniature fashion games which are out there. And that's something that's really important, is don't get scared by the big players, but really identify the audience, see what's relevant for them now, and then kind of make something out of that. And then kind of we took it from that. And I feel like that was a really good, strong foundation for us.
Yeah. I'm really looking forward, very excited for the steps forward. That's why also I wanted to spend this time with you today. As you are, again, going through the fundraising fun part, I interview also a lot of women founders. And there's a reality, because it's not pleasant to hear that reality, but I will put it out there again. Statistically, founded companies with at least one woman founder is like less than 10%, so very low, and investment that get you female founded 2-3%. And because also when you look on the other side of who are investor partner level, you have also less than 10% women. So I can imagine when you pitch a game that is coloring like I played, it spoke to me as a woman. I'm sure that it will not only be for women, but it's primarily for women. Presenting such an innovative idea for an audience that the investor don't understand. What are the challenges you found, and probably you meet again with you anticipating for the ones out there also producing, games that are not for investors as an audience?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's been an interesting challenge, because one aspect is that I feel like the investor that I'm speaking to isn't the stakeholder I need to convince, because sometimes they'll be like, oh, do you have an alpha build? I'm going to ask my wife, I'm going to ask my daughter. And then suddenly it's like someone else getting involved. And I'm like, okay, that's very interesting. That's been like, I don't know, this is my first time fundraising or speaking with investors. I don't know how normal that is, but it's kind of really interesting that it's like they're bringing in the experts to kind of give an opinion. So I'm like, oh, okay, it's not just about the meeting, but it's about what you can convey to those. But it's also about simplifying the messaging, I would say. It's been totally different from pre-seed to seed, I would say, because pre-seed, we didn't know what we were doing. I would be honest with you. It was kind of trying, seeing what stuck and things, and seed, it's a lot more methodical. But my experience has been, so speaking with investors, it's kind of okay, they're passing it on to other people. So one action is kind of making sure the, let's say, info packet that we give is as shareable as possible. So we produce some video trailers that's easy to share, that kind of gives the messaging. So it's not just like a handout deck or something like that, but there's also something that goes along with it. So it's easy to share. And then, of course, now we have the build version, which really allows people to get it in their hands. And we're pretty open with sharing it with that. I think also it's about simplifying the messaging and kind of going one level deeper, because Kutur Runway for us is step one, and we have a massive 5-year plan of world domination in terms of what we want to do. But it's simplifying it, and how do we get from 0 to 1, and making sure that journey makes sense, and regardless of what the product is. Because if the investor understands how you're going to get from 0 to 1, that's one aspect of it. And then kind of you can put in the idea of it being a fashion game, even if it's not their thing. I think the other challenge is we're not just speaking with gaming investors, but we're also speaking with investors outside of gaming. So we also have the challenge that they don't even know what a business model or the traditional business model for gaming is. So it's kind of about taking the time and making sure that we cater the pitch as we go into every meeting, of kind of being more conversational and really answering the questions, and making sure that we spend the time to personalize that experience. It's a real time eater, and you have to be super organized with it. And kind of we're making a database, every time we get asked a question and we have an answer for it, we're trying to build up this FAQ, and that happens with time. But that's really helpful. That's something that I can say is a good takeaway. I don't know, to kind of build out this FAQ and take the notes and take the time, and don't get disheartened, because not everyone is going to get it. It just takes that one who does. And there's been like a lot of no's, and a lot of people have been like, who would play a fashion game? Is that even a real thing? Like, we've had that comment before, and it's kind of like, okay, well then just put them on the no list and move on. You shouldn't let it, like, that opinion of one determine or influence your motivation, because it could be easy to do that.
And you have a deep insight, right? So here being very decisive in deepening the partnership where there's a resonance, and also moving on. So a lot of things that you shared is also some of the takeaways I had also from other founders, and being very strategic and prepared. I'd say like everything you describe is preparation. So you understand who's your audience once again, and making it easy either to share or whoever, however, when they need to go final decision, how the message can be conveyed, because it comes down to that, right? Whoever you're meeting, there's a decision maker that maybe is not in the room yet, and to access that person. So that's why I saw also the challenge when you have an idea that is so far away from what an investor in their world they could understand. It becomes almost like a whole exercise of communication and like those shareable assets and so on. So it's very valuable, actually, tips on how to do all that work. And that's part of the founder work as well, which is not working on the product, but as important when you try to raise. I have the other side of the business I was interested in inquiring, which are the partnerships, because you bring together in the same place. So on one end, you have players, like the audience, and maybe they wouldn't call themselves players, but consumers. And then you have the brand they love, the people they love, the personalities. So how has been the reception on the other side of the business to get really strong partnerships, names? If you can reveal some of them, great, but you don't have to, if at least on the profile that you're attracting.
Definitely. So I have to say, we're not the first fashion game that would have brand partnerships in it. It's such a natural synergy. But I think the opportunity of brands looking at games now has changed from maybe what it was 10 years ago or even 5 years ago. That really opens up a lot of doors of like, they know about gaming and they know about the opportunity. Like you can see like Gucci with Fortnite and things. These are like the really obvious ones, and other brands are saying, oh, I want to do that. And that's kind of like gives us a really good door opener. The reception from brands and the way we position ourselves is that we've built a product that evolves what a fashion game would be for the audience, but we've also thought about what brands want. And that's the benefit that Matthias, our creative director, he has built very successful fashion brands before, and he can kind of answer that. But we also have an advisory outside of that, and also external team members that come from fashion that can also give us really that perspective. And that's kind of why we've built the product, like with the fabric moving, with the visual fidelity, because we're very aware that maybe some games or experiences which are out there, you can't maintain your brand identity in them as easily. Like maybe the visual quality isn't so good. Maybe it's a pixel art style or an anime style or something. So it's really hard one-to-one for traditional brands or traditional designers to kind of picture how my brand would look in that world. So we try to create a world where it's really easy to picture how that traditional brand could look, and where they feel respected. I'm not saying they're disrespected in other ways, but where they feel like it's like, you know, I can really maintain my integrity here and keep up that of being like a high luxury brand or someone that pushes the boundaries. And the reception so far has been really, really good. I'm so surprised about the openness of the industry and the sharing of like, hey, I'm going to share it with this person and that person, and kind of like how it creates like a spider web. And I think the great thing about Tung, my other co-founder, is he's an amazing networker as well. So once he kind of knows one person, he's like really good at networking and schmoozing and kind of like opening up those doors and using the skills which he's built, building a network in the games industry and building that out in fashion as well, together with our advisors and some members of our external team. So it's been really positive. There's been a real openness for it. And more with the demo, it's less abstract because they can see it. So they can see the opportunity with Gucci and Fortnite or with other examples from the past. But then what they can visualize more than ever is like that workflow about how their brand could be into it. And what we offer is beyond just like, okay, let's put a digital copy of your garment in the game or add an e-commerce link. But we also take it beyond that. Like we kind of talk with them about how they could do a white label version, for example, of their own fashion experience, or kind of move beyond traditional fashion brands, but also like influencers, virtual pop stars, these kind of things that we can also integrate. So it's going really well. And Tung always uses the term cultural marketing, and it's a key part of our go-to-market strategy as well. It's kind of like working with these brands and cultural marketing. Who does our audience follow? Who are the taste makers, and who are the ones really making a difference culturally and impacting kind of our audience? And these are kind of the ones that we know, because it's not just about making a player persona anymore, because one of our personas is also brand. So we really looked into what their challenges are, where they are, and kind of like targeting them as well. So yeah, it's like another audience to tap into.
Yeah, but it sounds very promising again. And what I'm hearing is, in everything you describe, you're going really deeper in the experience at all levels, right? So deeper for the brand integration, synergy, and the fashion experience, the interaction with fashion. So taking it to the next level, what fashion means in 2024 and beyond in an interactive way, right? So taking the definition further from, instead of like you said, I call it fashion maybe 10 years ago, and starting from that point. So I can see that really translated, and that's for that, researching, innovating, all the work you've done. So in that sense, more of a defensibility of a business, because you can't shortcut the relationship, and all of the research that is crystallized, at least in that alpha version. Can you give us some more overview on, your team, the size, maybe like a composition, where you're located? I don't know. Next step with fundraising will take you to, and maybe already to market. So yeah, what's the path forward?
Definitely. So I would describe us as lean and mean, and like divide and conquer is one of the favorite terms that we use. And I have a love-hate relationship with the lean and mean, but it really is kind of about like not what you can't do, but looking at what you have and what you can do with it. So working with the core team that we've built, and then also we have externals. So kind of like a core team-wise, we have like between 5 and 6 people that really keeping it lean.
Super small,
yeah. Keeping it mean. And then kind of like we work with externals to kind of scale that and kind of scale it down. But what I would really have ambitions for team building, and maybe this is a takeaway, like I had a totally different perspective of what the team would look like once we got the pre-seed, when we were raising pre-seed. I guess coming from a corporate background, and when you dream about like, okay, I'm going to have a startup and this would be like my ideal composition, you can't have that right out from the gate. And that was kind of like when we were sitting and we were kind of had the pre-seed, and we were looking for kind of who would be the key players that we needed to get us to the next milestone. That was the realization of like, okay, I can't have this dream scenario, but I can have, let's say, 20% of it. And what can I achieve with that? And that was really like the reevaluation. But now going into seed and thinking about how that will impact the team, I'm really cautious about it. But I would really love to evolve to have more of a local team. Once we kind of get the seed raise, is kind of getting to that point where we've got more of like expanding the central hub that we have to create that atmosphere, because we are creating something super exciting. I don't want to go with doubt or imposter syndrome anymore. Like we are, and we've been validated with the pre-seed, and thanks to the work we've done, I'm more confident than ever. So I just really want to be like unapologetic. Like the game that I want to make is kind of like, okay, let's just go all in, have this core team, be a bit more traditional, be a bit more local. In terms of the seed, so we're actively raising. What this would allow us to do is execute the roadmap to evolve the alpha kind of initial prototype version, to implement player feedback data that we get, and really start live operating and expanding that foundation that we've got. We would also like to execute some of the brand partnerships we have lined up. So we've already laid a really strong foundation for that and have some really good names on the table, but it's just kind of, it's not a free lunch. It's kind of like you have to start executing that. We also want to start building out our creator community. We have AI creator tools that we're developing on the side, but the game itself is compatible with Clo 3D or kind of like these existing tools. So we want to strengthen the creator community to allow them to kind of have their fashion in the game, because it's not just about the big brands. Games has changed, there's a lot of more user-generated content than there was before. So giving them a platform for digital fashion to kind of like be a virtual brand if they want to be.
Yeah, sounds good. And I see that shift as well in your words, that I would say Pre-Seed is kind of a testing on both sides, right? Like founders, what we're developing. So it's like shy move. But at Seed, this is a commitment. Okay, let's commit, let's go all in. And I would really encourage, now that you've tested your assumptions, your confidence, because I think it comes a lot also with the confidence of the conviction of founders, to go really like all in. And I think that's where you will find the market, and then with no regrets looking back, right? So it sounds really exciting, and I'm very supportive, of your step forward in the fundraising. I'm sure we hear more about that. Is there something I didn't ask at last that I should have asked, or you wanted to share for today?
Oh gosh, that puts me on the spot. Yeah, I think I would love to see more female founders in games. That would be something that I could encourage, like more women to, if you have an idea, to execute it. Depending on the country, like the amount of female gamers on mobile is between 49% and 54%. That's how many women are playing games on mobile. The amount of females creating games for those women is still a small amount. And I would love to see more female creators. Like I had the opportunity to go to GDC for the first time this year, and I connected with a lot more women thanks to some of the initiatives and the different events that was ongoing. But it was still a very small amount of us that were actually founding our own studios and making games for women, designed by women. And the money is there, like they're really open. There's no door slamming, or I didn't feel like I wasn't taking as seriously or something like that. It's just being brave enough to kind of make the leap and do it. So I would encourage not to let the fear hold you back, just have a conversation and kind of see where it goes. And that was kind of how we took it, like step by step, because I think it's needed.
Wow. Well, I don't have much more to add. I think you said it all. And coaching also a lot of women founders these days. It's really like building the confidence, but also you showing up today and sharing your experience means a lot, because, we're not alone. Sometimes it feels from me, but we're not alone. And finding that support around to find that courage, take it step by step. So thank you very much. And I'm optimistic and hopeful there will be more. We have also more women coming in the investment world in games. So that's good, step by step.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for sharing your experience today, Nicola. I got really into your world for a time of today. So it really inspired me, and I hope also you feel the same. And how can people connect with you, whether, that resonated with you in terms of, investing maybe, connecting with you, or getting to test you off? How can we reach out to you?
Just reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I think that's the best way. And then from there, I can give you an email and kind of, we can take it from there.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thanks for tuning in today. Thanks, Nicola.
Thank you for having me. Yeah. I feel like this has been very nice, and you have a lot more knowledge to share than I, so I really love your podcast, and it's very insightful.
Thank you. Take care, everyone. See you next time. Bye.
Thanks for listening to this latest episode of the Rise and Play podcast. We keep growing our community of conscious leaders across the industry and beyond. If you want to join this movement, please share the podcast with other conscious leaders, because we have so much more we can learn from each other. And if you want to accelerate your growth, I offer creative leadership coaching and workshop, plus other free resources that you can find on riseandplay.io. I can't wait to connect with you. Have a great week, and remember to take care of yourself. Until the next time,